Hi, I'm Naomi Eklund. This is Jennifer Dahlberg. We are Infinite Yes. uh, there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about that are on my mind, and I know these things affect Jennifer's life too. You know, I suffer from chronic pain. I also have ADHD. So I have an autoimmune disorder, which relates to inflammation, which relates to chronic pain. I'm an empath. I'm a highly sensitive person. I have ADHD. And, so on paper, like wrap me up and throw me in the lake, right?
This is why bubble wrap was made.
This is why bubble wrap was made, yes. No, but I wanted to talk about this because I know that a lot of people out there are dealing with so many aspects of this. And especially now, it seems like overlapping symptoms are coming up. And now they're talking about ADHD and dopamine deficiency also being related to pain and to stiff muscles and soreness. And a lot of empaths I know, actually, I don't know any empaths or highly sensitive people that don't have some form of chronic pain or some form of autoimmune or whatever words you want to call it. So I wanted to talk about this for a little bit because frankly, these can be debilitating.
Yes.
I think, I know personally, I've had days when I don't want to go on. How about you, Jen?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a chronic migraine sufferer. And so I wake up every single day with my head in a vice and I have to take medication every single day, and it's exhausting, absolutely exhausting to deal with chronic pain. So yes, it does diminish hope and energy and all those things. And so people who are dealing with that struggle very much so.
So part of my message is that to pretend that you don't have pain and you're just gonna run out there, because there are days when I can, go for 12 hours and I'm like, I've got like a full head of steam. And then there are days when it's like, okay, if I get out of bed to go eat, I will be fine. Yeah. And so my own skeptical mind goes, well, so how can you teach anyone anything if you're suffering? Because I have a really nasty little squirrel that lives in the back of my brain.
I think we all do.
I also have like the really stupid squirrel from Ice
Scratch or whatever his name is.
That believes the thing that the mean squirrel says.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that my meditation has given me more power and more hope and more empowerment, and is the thing that I turn to when I don't know how else to have my body work. And so, first of all, I want to say to everybody out there, I've said this before, I will say it again, we are not doctors. We are speaking from personal experience. We are not giving anybody medical advice. Take whatever we say, talk to your medical or your healthcare professionals about it. So just to be really clear, this is not medical advice. This is two people talking to you from their experience. So for me, you all know or will that last year I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was really surprising. It was a polyp in my sinus that was misdiagnosed as sleep apnea 3 years ago. And it never got better, even with the machine and everything else. And, it's a very interesting thing to get pulled into that medical system. And it's a very interesting mindset, especially when you're a super sensitive person. And you're pulled into a system that doesn't always acknowledge the sensitivities. I actually said to my doctor, and he was a lovely doctor, not discrediting him at all. But I actually said to him, he's like, we don't really understand, why. First of all, why was this contained? Why didn't this spread? Why did it grow so slowly? Like, why are you okay in spite of this, which normally a person would not be okay? And I said to him, I said, well, maybe it has something to do with eating very little processed food and meditating. And his response was, I can't quantify that, so I can't tell you if it does or doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I can quantify
Pretty
it.
standard answer in that world.
I can quantify it because I have a PET scan and 3 MRIs that said that they needed to go in and do a biopsy. Mm-hmm. And then I was given a particular meditation to do for healing my sinuses and aligning myself in a different way. And 3 weeks later, the MRI and the new PET scan showed no problems and no activities. And 4 out of the 5 doctors said there was nothing that I should do.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I talk about meditation, I'm not just talking about like, oh, we should meditate. I'm talking about balancing, aligning, and learning to work with my energy has saved my life.
Yes. Absolutely.
And for me, it is the thing mm-hmm. that makes the difference. Mm-hmm. And the meditation for me is in cooperation and collaboration with things like we've talked about, like the power versus force, the frequency information, mm-hmm. the mindset meditation, all of that kind of works together. Mm-hmm. So if I wake up and I'm feeling especially like I, want to cry, which some mornings are like that. Some mornings I would just really like to just sit down and cry and go back to sleep. Yeah. Everyone out there with any kind of chronic condition understands exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And for me, thinking about the things I'm grateful for helps get me into a different energy. It's almost like I am meditating on the reasons to go on, instead of allowing the problem to have mastery of me. And this goes back to conversation a few days ago about self-mastery. Mm-hmm. These bodies, this world, do not always collaborate the way we want them to. Mm-hmm. But the question is, do we become our own master? And how do we honor our delicateness or sensitivity and work with it so it becomes a strength? So thank you for my hypersensitivity. It allows me to see, feel, and know things that other people miss. Yes. And can I also please have some relief? Yeah. So how about you? I know you work a lot with mindset, and
I do. I also work with, for my migraines, I work with sound frequencies a lot, which I think now that I'm thinking of it is sort of my form of meditation, because I'm focusing on the sound and those frequencies that are designed for pain relief really help me a lot. And I actually do guided meditations for pain relief as well. I also, with migraines, anyone who suffers with chronic migraines, you get 50 people giving you, what about this? What about that? What about that? I do them all.
Well, and one of the things that we've both used is, and found very useful, are essential oils.
Yes. Peppermint is my best friend. But it's interesting because I use it like a meditation. Like I focus on the smell, and I focus on the tingling, and I focus on, this is going to work. and a lot of times it does. And that's what I think is really interesting, is that placebo effect of just focusing on that instead of focusing on the pain. It doesn't always work the way I want it to. And that's, the mindset has to come into play on those days where all my remedies and therapies just can't get in front of it, and there's a good 7 days of the month where that's just a fact. And so then I have to rely on, you'll be okay, you're going to get through this. It's only 7 days of the month. The other days I can manage, So, I do have to get into my bag of tools to cope with the chronic pain. Now I am one of those people that I spend so much time in the management of that pain that most people forget I have it. My own husband forgets I have it. I'm like, I'm sitting right next to you. How do you not know? But he's like, but you just keep moving. So,
well, here's something that
fortunate that I can keep moving, I guess. So I show gratitude to that.
Well, it is. It's self-mastery, but also recognizing that there are needs without beating yourself up, like allowing the process. Like we talked about this with emotions the other day. It's like allowing the process to move with you toward another decision.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not like you woke up deciding that you were going to have a migraine, or I woke up deciding that, I was going to feel like it hurt to move, but, for me, 9 times out of 10, if I can push myself to start moving, and then as I push myself to start moving, I recognize my body can heal itself, my body can regenerate. I mean, my body is better now than it was 6 months ago by a long shot.
Yes.
My energy level, my body, my health, and that helps me. It helps me to say, you know what, 6 months ago, I couldn't even get this far. And 6 months from now, I'm going to be even better. So those kinds of things do help. And then sometimes it's still like, I need to stop and rest. Like last night, I did something completely stupidly insane, which was I ate the mozzarella cheese sticks from Costco, which like there's nothing about them that I can eat. It's cheese, it's wheat, it's corn. I'm sure there's soy in there. It's like dairy. It's just like, I can't eat these, but it was just like, so I ate some and, so this morning it was like, oh yeah, I adjusted what I could last night before I went to bed, but this morning I woke up and like, yeah, I did that. I made that choice. But you know what? I made that choice.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to beat myself up about having made that choice because I truly enjoyed those little nasty cheese sticks.
You should. Yeah.
I don't do that often, but I did, so for me, dealing with the moment, it's like there was a show on Netflix called The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah.
And I just love that show. I thought it was so cute. And she said, how did I get through that? Somebody said, well, how did you get through this? She said, you can do anything for 10 seconds at a time.
Yes.
And I do hold on to that, like the wisdom of a sitcom, but sometimes it exists, just like I can do anything for 10 seconds at a time. Like I can recognize that I caused inflammation in my body for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And I can go and I can move and I can do the things that I need to do to bring the inflammation down. I can change my mindset. I can decide that I'm going to do the meditation that makes everything in my body move and more fluid. I can also recognize that, one of the things they found when they were looking for the autoimmune disorder was they found what's called a Charloff cyst on my spine, because why not,
Yeah. If you're going to do something, do it right.
And it's interesting because people are like, well, oh, you're fat or you're old or whatever. And it's just like, well, you know what? Even the doctor said there was nothing that I could have done about the cancer or the cyst. Those are just things that happen. And then, of course, both of those things aggravate the autoimmune. So what can I do about it? I have a dear friend who you can all find on our website. Her name is Rosie. She is a counselor in Christ consciousness, and she has a really, really strong healing energy about her. And she did some energy work that got me started on reducing the cyst. And I've been using some of Edgar Casey's remedies. Edgar Casey, for people who don't know, he was a medical intuitive who channeled a lot of information. And one of the things he talked a lot about was castor oil, which has been proven to be a great anti-inflammatory. And you can do it externally. You don't have to do it internally. And so like the symptoms from the cyst, I don't have anymore. And so that's when I talk about mastery, or for 10 seconds, a little bit at a time, just like, oh, I don't have those, like I have actually reduced that problem.
Yeah.
I did not give into that problem. You know, I did not give into it. I may have honored it, been patient, worked through it. So I want to talk a little bit about why do you think that highly sensitive and empathic people might deal with these things more than others? But before you answer that, I want to say, like when you were talking about with your husband, sometimes I find it really, really amazing that people can't feel that other people are hurting the way that I feel that other people are hurting. It's like, you know, you can walk into a room and you're just like, oh, poor baby, or oh my gosh. And it's like when people watch shows where like people or animal are hurt or hurting, and they like make a joke out of it. Like I can't.
Neither.
Like I think it's called Schadenfreude. Like I might have that wrong. So if I do, please forgive me. But it's like this idea that other people's pain can be funny.
I don't like any of those shows where people get hurt for laughter.
I can't do it because I feel what they feel. You know? Yeah. And so I think that for those of us that are highly sensitive and empathic, there's a jumping off point there. And I want to talk about managing our energy, but I also want to hear about your thoughts and feelings on it before we talk.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure for other people. I can only live through my experience and the information I get from people who have shared with me. But I definitely feel that my chronic pain absolutely is affected very, very deeply by being an empath and a highly sensitive person. I take in energy in a way that even I forget sometimes as I'm moving through the world. It's interesting how like certain places you feel more exposed than others, and you'll get like, for example, we have a mall close to my home that is a two-story home or two-story mall. And the second story is built in a way that it vibrates all the time to be earthquake safe. And if I go to that mall, I am exhausted, absolutely exhausted by the process of just being in that building on that floor. And no one can feel it, but I can. I can feel the vibration of the building, and it wipes me out. I feel like I got run over by the time I leave the mall. And it's so silly, you know, but it's an interesting thing to become aware of because other people aren't experiencing it that way. You know, that's that highly sensitive part of me. The empath part of me, like you said, I walk into a room full of people, I start picking up vibration of emotion, frustration, whatever people are going through. And so, you know, you know, as you know, Enneagram wise, I live in a household full of all body types. I am the only heart type, and all of the body types have they're a little more easy access to their anger. And so I'm like, why are you mad? And they literally will all like, no, I'm not. I'm like, I can feel it. I know you're mad. You don't think you're showing me, but I can feel it. And it's so they don't have that same response, you know. But it can be very overwhelming and exhausting. And my migraines are all very much affected by this energy right in here, which is where I hold all my stress. And a lot of that stress comes from feeling the vibrations of the world around me, feeling the emotions of the world around me. And, you know, if I'm having a good boundary day, then I do a little better. And if I forget to have my boundaries, it can be rough.
As you're saying that, I think that one of the things that I do that helps me a lot is I do various forms of stretching, some of them yoga type stretches.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if some of those stretches, especially things like face yoga, would be useful for what you're describing, or hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah. I mean, I've, like I said, everyone always like, oh, what about this? I'm like, yeah, I know. I've done it. I do all the supplements. I do all the anti-inflammatories, you know. But if you're having chronic migraine, you can ask me and I'll tell you all the 28 things I do every day. But, you know, one of the important things is maintaining my energy. It's, you know, finding that safety place for myself in my energy. You know, I can't completely cut off and have boundary that cuts me off from people. That goes against my core values. I need to be connected to people. So it's finding that line of, you know, am I going to give away my energy in this situation? Am I going to keep my energy in this situation? And how is that going to affect my pain? So, you know, some days I'm really good at it and I can maintain. You know, I always say I always have a migraine, but is it at volume 2 or volume 15? You know, and so if I have a really good boundary day and I'm doing a good job with my energy levels and I'm doing all my little home remedies, then I can get it down to a 2 and I can function and participate in the world, and no one can tell that I'm in pain, you know. But except for the other people like me who are like, oh, poor baby, you know. So, but you know, like you said, it's also a gift, you know, to be able to move through the world, understanding the vibe of a person around you and being able to meet them when everyone else maybe misses it. You know, I mean, I'll call out my oldest son is an intuitive and he's an empath. He doesn't want to spend a lot of time in that energy. He likes to be intellectual, but he absolutely is the only person who can walk into a room. And if I'm saying I'm fine, he's like, no, you're not. He can feel it. So it's a gift to be seen by someone who can see you. So I always have to remind myself, like, I'm doing that for other people too. So it's okay that I have a little headache.
Well, and one of the things to remember, and this is probably true for a lot of people who are having chronic pain, is trauma.
Yes.
You know, and there are tools and we are working with them and through them. And there's some very good tools out there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be interviewing somebody who works with EMDR. There are some very good tools that help relieve these symptoms. There are some very good tools that help us to rewire. And so we're going to be working to bring you some of those people and some of those ideas, because I know for me, understanding that my trauma, which pretty extensive, and I know you had more than your fair share of it too, and a lot of people who are in chronic pain have a lot of trauma, which is one of the reasons why you're, especially in our older, you know, let's say over 40 group, you know, your therapist might have missed the fact that you actually have ADHD because you also had trauma, you know, because some of these symptoms mimic. And this is why we have to accept that healing is a process.
Yeah.
You know, there are very few there are people who have woken up to the fact that there's a soul and there's life and there's all of these other things. But there are very few actual like Buddhas or Christ or masters in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying they don't exist, but I'm saying that there are not very many of them. And it is really important that we remember that we honor the fact that we're healing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am thoroughly a proponent of learning without suffering. The reality is that most of us suffer. And the thing that kind of bums me out a little bit, honestly, is that most people don't start healing until they suffer too much.
Yeah.
So there are lots of tools. There are lots of ways, and I don't think we can criticize and say one way is wrong or the other. For some people, it's pharmacological assistance. For some people, it's things like CBD or psilocybin, or for some people, it's herbs. I don't do especially well with pharmaceuticals. I do much better with herbs. Mm-hmm. Understanding the herbs to use makes a huge difference in my life. Mm-hmm. And I know that some people out there get really purist and they're like, well, if your energy was good enough, well, I don't know. Is that true? Because we do have physical bodies and we live in a world where there's physical needs. To pretend
there's energy around us we have no control over.
Right. Exactly. I think that there's some people get really purist, and I'm a proponent of address the problem on every level you can, because some days the meditation is what's going to pull you out of it, and someday the valerian is going to pull you out of it. And some days your best friend or your dog is going to pull you out of it. And someday you're just going to sleep through it. And some days you're going to will yourself out of it.
Yes, that's why 28 remedies.
Deal with it. Right. So that goes back to self-compassion. Yeah. That also goes back to self-mastery, understanding that, every answer is not the same every day, and having the patience with yourself to find the answer for that day. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit is we talk about boundaries. And, some people would say, well, if your boundaries were good enough, you wouldn't have this. And I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that. There are some people who are not highly sensitive or who are not empathic, who I can't tell you how many people who are not empathic or highly sensitive have tried to school me on boundaries. Yeah. And, their intentions.
It's like a tall person telling a short person they should just be tall.
I'm not saying that they're not coming from a good and loving place. All I'm saying is that, I can see your Akashic records without trying. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I also respond to the pain and the healing that needs to happen in the world around me. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think of being an empath as being sort of like an oyster in the world. How do I turn all of this debris into pearls, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first time that I learned about boundaries, I was talking to a family member who was really quite disturbing to me. And I just remember, before anybody said the word boundaries, I just stuck my hand out. And I just imagined that this person and this person's voice could not go past my hand.
Yeah.
And this person was very verbally aggressive. And I just remember kind of doing this. Mm-hmm. And it was such a relief. I was in my early 20s at the time. And because we've talked about, nobody really wants to not love their parents or their family. We all want that. Mm-hmm. That's like a normal human thing to want to connect with it. But sometimes we have to accept that is making us feel bad.
Yeah.
And so that was for me, that was this aha moment, just this gut reaction. And it was such a turning point for me. People are like, well, as sensitive as you are, how can you go and speak to large audiences? Well, because when I'm speaking to an audience, I'm not there to take anything on from the audience. I'm there as a channel and directing energy to the audience.
Yes.
When I'm working with clients, I'm not taking their things on. I'm bringing that energy through. I'm observing. I've learned to create this boundary. And from a boundary point of view, I think I do fairly well. I have a lot of practice. Where I get in trouble is when I forget that when I'm like out walking in the world or talking to a friend, that I still need to have that boundary up, because my predisposition is to clear everything for everybody around me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an 8, so I pretty much think it's my job to just, take care of everybody around me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In a different way than a 2.
Yeah, you're going to fight all our battles.
Absolutely. Who else will?
Yeah.
So I think that boundaries help a lot. For me, going back to my meditation,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that helps a lot is that when I have a boundary, which for me is a visualization of a space around me about 3 feet, and then I have a meditation that I do that looks a lot like the Nikola Tesla's torus, where it's going the sort of circular thing.
Mm-hmm.
That helps to clear me, ground me, helps me to feel better. It helps my energy flow a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things for us to remember too is sometimes when you're having chronic pain, there's actually a message in it.
Yes.
I've done some work with you. There's messages in your headaches. There's reasons that those happen, and they're associated with your trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The people who caused you the trauma, they're still on the planet and they're still trying to connect with you. So it's, if someone is constantly projecting at you, we have to understand that I guess we have to be nice to ourselves, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And keep adjusting as we go.
Mm-hmm.
So, a couple of the things, especially if we're talking about mindset and energy, is I don't think that, for me at least, like waking up and saying I am pain-free and energetic, that doesn't work, because that's too far the opposite of my experience.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, waking up and going, I am grateful for the fact that I know how to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
I am grateful for the fact that I know that I can go and take my turmeric, or I can go and I can drink my coffee, or I can go and take these supplements, or I can do this meditation. In 15 minutes from now, I'm going to feel better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or I know that I ate crappy processed cheese sticks last night and I really, really enjoyed it. And I understand why I feel this way. I did this.
And it's okay.
And you know what? I enjoyed the cheese sticks.
Yeah.
So I think my message to everybody is, it is really very normal, very common, maybe not normal, for highly sensitive people, empaths, people with, extreme emotional awareness, to have these kinds of pains in our body. Mm-hmm. And you have to start with self-compassion, because a lot of the people in the world don't understand, don't have compassion. They can't even conceptualize what it's like to feel everybody's pain.
Right.
That's why for 50 or 60% of the population, some of the communication tools that we give people are so necessary. That's why things like the Enneagram help so much, because it helps people put things into context. Oh, that's how that person feels. Like, if you're an empath, you already know how people feel.
Yeah, but it's nice to have words, I love it when I find tools that give me words to explain the way I move through the world.
Absolutely.
Because I couldn't explain it before and people thought I was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So now I can explain it. And then they go, oh, that makes sense. It's like, I have words now. Thank you for the tools.
So I think that what I would like people to walk away from this with is, you're not wrong, bad, crazy. There's nothing dysfunctional about you. That is part of the way that particular body or person functions.
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying that it's easy? No. Am I saying that you might want to find somebody who works with energy or healing or herbs or nutrition or oils, and there may be things that are not in the mainstream for answers for you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to replace your medical care. I'm saying try to figure out how to make it work together, and do simple meditation. Start doing things. And when I say meditation, as I've said before, I'm not talking about like going somewhere and zenning out.
Mm-hmm.
When I say meditation, I am talking about very simply doing your 3x3, paying attention to who you are, having some more compassion for yourself. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And there's this whole movement that you can make inside of yourself to, there's nothing wrong with me. I can master this.
Yeah.
I can do this for 10 seconds. I can move this way for 10 seconds. I can find a position to lay down in for 10 seconds where I'm not in pain, so I can regain a little bit of energy so I can make my next choice.
Yes.
And a lot of people on the spiritual path are empaths or light workers or people who feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong with you.
Mm-mm.
And yet you do need to know that you can master your body.
Yeah.
And that you can even become a master of the pain to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Which essentially is sort of a energy worker's samurai mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say I'm the master of the strategy to deal with chronic pain. I have a strategy. I have a battle plan, and I'm going to win.
Yes, you do. And you do most days.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like for people to know that we have, like in our library of videos on YouTube and our upcoming podcast episodes, we have people like Graciela Teofold, who does fantastic job of sound healing. She's a Reiki master. She's just a beautiful soul.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many other people who have found their way to relieve that suffering, you know. So let's talk about these tools. Let's use these tools and give ourselves a break.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go to our website, learn how to use mindset, learn how to use the Enneagram, learn how to use the tools, and let us know what other tools you're interested in or what works for you, so we can interview other practitioners, so we can get more ideas and information and help to everybody.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you.